Okay, I wanted to thank everyone for coming. This is our second group nutritional counseling session. And if you guys haven't already met Jolene, I wanted to introduce you to Jolene Park. She's the owner of Healthy Discoveries, and she is a certified nutritionist. And today's topic is going to be food craving and hopefully what we can do about that. Yeah. So take it away, Jolene.
Thank you. Thank you guys for coming out in the rain. This, I think, is like the culmination of my favorite thing to talk about, and it's rare to kind of do this type of focus talk, so I just love it. This could be an all-day workshop, so since we just have an hour, I'm just kind of hitting you with all types of healthy discoveries, and just know that there isn't a set formula for this topic as far as here's what you all need to go home and do, but there's many resources that we just don't hear about when we talk about food cravings and compulsion. So I want to give you those resources and then help you kind of start to put together your own plan. I'll talk about a lot of books. I love books, and I'll just kind of talk through resources and hope to uncover some things that you may not have heard or thought about and kind of get you excited about this, because I think it's a really exciting topic. Just a little bit about myself. I've studied nutrition for over a decade. Just personally, college, I definitely would binge eat. I mean, I would reach for sugar, and it was my coping mechanism. And now, kind of knowing my own brain chemistry, I mean, I'm an anxious personality. I love public speaking, but I'm a worrier. And so that has been, for whatever reason, I was born with it or I just have developed that habit, but it's definitely kind of has been a go-to. The more I studied nutrition and kind of really learned physiology, and especially this, it's like, what a relief. And to really kind of understand that it's not about, I crave something sugary, I should just chew a piece of gum and walk around the block. No. Like, there's so much more to it, and to me it's really interesting. And if there's anything that I could do for you guys today is just take away the shame, because I mean, this is not a shameful thing. There's physical things that are going on, and so I really want to kind of explore that with you. And then also, for me, just studying integrative medicine and the mind-body, there's so much to look at with as well. And then I've been lucky with the nutrition that I've trained with a real foodie group of doctors, and so they love this kind of looking at this biochemistry. But then we'd sit in conferences all day, and then we go out, and they're all about like great fillets and a glass of red wine and some decadent dark chocolate. And so that has really helped me personally and professionally too. That food is not to be we don't need to be afraid of it, especially when we understand kind of what's happening from a craving perspective. So that's where I want to go today. And hang on. There's lots to kind of talk through, but it's a fascinating topic, and it's not meant to make you feel bad and ashamed of kind of wherever you sit with cravings. So what I'd like to start with is this idea that really looking at the physical and looking at brain chemistry. Has anyone explored this or read about serotonin or dopamine a little bit? What have you read, or what?
Actually, I think the book was called The Craving Brain.
Okay.
I think is what it was called, and it was not just food, but alcoholism, and that's how I told you I kind of made the connection that in my family there had been previous alcoholism, and that I think I'm just kind of a dry drunk.
Yeah.
Because I just supplement it with sugar instead of alcohol.
So it's very common, families of alcoholism, they say often it skips a generation. So there's one generation that drinks a lot, and then the next generation that doesn't, but often what they do is eat a lot of sugar. So it's the same pathway in the brain, medicating the same way, just choosing different vices. Sugar and alcohol run the same pathway. So Oprah did a show. There were patients who had the bypass surgery, and then they started drinking heavily. So what that's saying is, this is a neurotransmitter. It's a brain issue. So people stopped the starchy, sugary food, but they didn't heal their brain and neurotransmitters, so they started drinking. So people do it the other way. People stop drinking, and then they load up on sugar. So AA meetings are full of sugary coffee and donuts, and people go the other way. So unless we heal the neurotransmitter, this is not a white knuckle, you need to affirm and visualize and have more willpower. This is healing the physical. So what this is, it's the equivalent of, saying to a diabetic, your pancreas isn't making enough insulin, so just think really positive thoughts that you can make insulin. It's the same thing. It's like your body's not making enough dopamine for whatever. Just think really positive thoughts and have better willpower and better portion control to make more dopamine. It doesn't happen. So we have to address it physically. This is not, we'll look at psychology, but definitely first the physical. So so the neurotransmitters, the three big ones, are dopamine, Gaba, and serotonin. So the one that we hear a lot is serotonin. Often when people take antidepressants boost up serotonin. And so when these neurotransmitters get depleted, become deficient, these are some of the symptoms. And like I said, we could talk about this for 8 hours, about these mechanisms of these neurotransmitters. So I am taking just a little piece of context and giving you guys a couple symptoms. Okay, so just know that there's so much more to say about this. But just for a quick, for this discussion, some common things, if there's a dopamine deficiency, often some symptoms that people feel is they have low energy, they can be tired, their blood sugar is erratic and unstable, so insulin's connected with this. They have a lot more carbohydrate cravings, diabetes, because insulin gets all thrown off, hypoglycemic, meaning their blood sugar goes low. They have troubles with obesity, slow metabolism, feel depressed, feel worthless. They seek out behaviors, to mimic kind of pleasure-seeking things because they don't feel like their life is full of pleasure. Have a low tolerance to stress. They abuse substances, crave sugar, want to isolate socially, lack of follow-through, and procrastinate. So these are it's a general symptom of depression, and we beat ourselves up. God, I just can't, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to move. I just feel depressed. And it's physical to start with. We're going to talk psychology, but the first thing that I want you to know is, don't shame yourself. And the body's just trying to bring that balance up. And so it's saying, we're depleted, we're imbalanced, reach for some sugar, because that kind of mimics, it's like, oh. And so your body's just trying to bring you back into balance, into a homeostasis, and then we beat ourselves up. So I think the more honest we can be I'm always interested when I work with people, what are you craving? Because it really tells me what their metabolism or brain is doing, okay? So that's a dopamine. GABA, which is actually where I fall with kind of that deficiency. So this is the major inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain, and it keeps all other biochemicals in check. And when the rhythm of GABA is off, people feel anxious, nervous, irritable, crave carbohydrates, obsessive compulsive. So we want to remember this, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more about people who get really obsessed with food and diet. Antenna go up for me, because it's not, that they're just a really, that they're on it with their diet. There could be a deficiency in their brain chemistry. So OCD type stuff, they have trouble sleeping or they sleep too much, but it's a lot of anxiety if GABA is depleted. And then serotonin, this is kind of the alcohol, sugar, general thing. And again, these are huge generalizations, but excessive sleep, craving salts, impulsiveness, feeling really paranoid, rage, kind of lashing out at pieces. So the way, again, this is such a kind of a general piece. So what I have and what I recommend is to actually type yourself. And so you go through this questionnaire, and it's from Eric Braverman, who is a medical doctor. This questionnaire is in his book. It's called The Edge Effect. And I think it's incredibly accurate. And I learned all about this through medical training. And we've found that this is just as accurate as, testing someone's neurotransmitter levels is to just do this quiz. And so some of the, questions on here are, I find it easy to process my thoughts. Some people say I'm irrational. I will do anything to reach a goal. So it's that kind of thing. And then it's typing where are you deficient, where are you excess. And then what his book then goes to do is you can look up serotonin, GABA, dopamine, and it'll give you food, supplements, lifestyle, and exercise recommendations to boost up that neurotransmitter. So it's fascinating. And, so the kind of tagline of the title of this book is Reverse or Prevent Alzheimer's, Aging, Memory Loss, Weight Gain, Sexual Dysfunction, and More. So the brain is, all of this stuff beyond just kind of weight and cravings. And in this box below here, how are our neurotransmitters depleted? Lots of mental, if we're under a lot of mental stress, if we're feeling really angry, hi there. If we're doing too many things and keeping busy all day, so we're on the computer and we're answering 5 different emails, and yeah, if you just want to have a seat here. Hi there. Thanks, Amy. So really under a lot of mental stress, if you're angry and holding on to it, doing too many things, watching TV, you're on Facebook, you're on the phone trying to write something. If you have low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, you don't eat enough calories, or you skip meals, too much alcohol, too many drugs, you don't sleep, lack of, if you're over-exercising, if you're not getting enough sunshine, too many artificial sweeteners, or too much sugar. So that's pretty much the American society, basically.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. So welcome, guys.
Can I summarize that real quick?
Yeah.
What Jolene is talking about is so complicated. I think we're only kind of guessing about how these signals interact with each other. But Jolene might show us a little video clip where Dr. Lustig is speaking. And he summarizes some of these neurotransmitters. And so he describes dopamine and norepinephrine as the activating neurotransmitter, or it's the transmitters that signal pleasure. And on the other side of it, we have Gaba and serotonin, which are inhibitory, and they signal happiness. So it's a matter of the signals that give us pleasure and the signals that give us happiness.
Yeah.
And aside from that, we don't know much more about it.
Wow.
So it's a very interesting study to look at brain chemistry and what can deplete our brain chemistry, which is basically our lifestyles. And then we want to eat sugar, and we want to drink alcohol, or we want to smoke cigarettes, and then we beat ourselves up. And so, my message to you is to let go of some of the shame of why do I keep going after those brownies year after year after year, and that there really are things we can do to bring the mind and the body back into balance, and you're not a weak person. You're not doing something wrong, and it really is fixable. I mean, we really can bring some balance there. So we'll talk about kind of some of those things to do, and it goes back to a lot of the foundational pieces we talk with nutrition, and it starts to make sense of why things like essential fats are so important and lean proteins are so important and that kind of thing. But let me, if this will work, if you guys can see it. Let me see if I can pull this up and just, like Dr. Gerber said, kind of summarize. Let's see if this will work here. Do I need to tilt it a little more? You guys see? Okay.
Research shows that eating sweet, salty, or fatty foods activates the same parts of the brain as addictive drugs do. When we put these foods in our mouths, our taste buds respond by sending signals to the brain reward circuitry. In response to these signals, dopamine, a chemical message in the brain, is released signaling something pleasurable. Other brain chemicals, such as endorphins, are also released. These are opioids that have rewarding effects similar to heroin or cocaine. Endorphins make food pleasurable and lead people to seek out rewarding foods. Some studies show that certain foods and drugs alter the dopamine reward circuits and blunt the dopamine receptors in parts of the brain, causing tolerance. The result? People need to eat more to reach the same level of pleasure, which may lead to uncontrolled eating.
Sugar, specifically fructose, the sweet part of sugar, will cause 4 phenomena, all of which are necessary for the diagnosis of addiction in animals. Number 1, craving. Number 2, binging. Number 3, withdrawal. And number 4, cross-sensitization with other drugs of abuse.
Dr. Lustig says sugar, like other drugs, rewires the dopamine pathways so that just thinking about sugar triggers a neurological response that makes us crave more. The more sugar we eat, the more we need to eat to get the same flood of feel-good dopamine.
Ethanol can do it. And morphine can do it, cocaine can do it, and nicotine can do it. And now, sadly, we've learned sugar can do it too.
Researchers at the University of Bordeaux in France found that cocaine-addicted rats actually worked harder for sugar than they did for cocaine. Given a choice between sugar and cocaine, rats almost invariably chose the sugar, even when faced with increasing doses of cocaine.
So have you guys heard any of that before? Is that completely new or okay? All right. So again, I mean, sugar, the more sugar we eat, basically what it's saying is it kind of blunts the dopamine receptors. And, you know, when we have balanced dopamine and serotonin receptors, we feel good, we feel happy, we feel satisfied, we're not craving, we're not hungry, we sleep well, and I'm not depressed, life is good. When those get depleted, we want to bring them up, and so then we reach for, it just becomes kind of a vicious cycle. We reach for sugar, it mimics it, we get kind of that artificial feeling of, okay, I feel kind of relaxed for a minute, but then it depletes even more, and then we want more sugar.
Where was that clip from?
That is the UC Berkeley, and if you, so Google UC Berkeley food addiction. Yep, and I listed it for you. Okay, so really, and again, I would really recommend Eric Braverman to see kind of where your deficiency is and then what he gives for specific recommendations. Now, his recommendations are going to be whole food. So when we talk paleo, when we talk low carb, when we talk eating whole real food, this is where it becomes really fascinating of why it's just incredibly critical to eat that. Because so when we eat protein, protein has amino acids, and I printed this out, and this, it just kind of goes through the amino acids. So alanine assists glucose metabolism, so sugar metabolism. So arginine stimulates the growth hormone, which is really good and going to help you lose weight, and it can help increase muscle mass while decreasing body fat. Glutamine, which actually we recommend people who have really bad sugar cravings or alcohol cravings to supplement with L-glutamine. It's an amino acid, and you can take it in a powder form or capsule form. And L-glutamine, is found in meat, and it reduces sugar cravings for alcohol, and it helps the muscles. It's really good for your intestinal tract too. It helps heal. It's not. No, I didn't print it.
It's right here.
Other supplements.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
what I'm reading I didn't print, but I have some supplements in there. So let's see, leucine reduces excessive blood sugar, good source of fuel during long workouts. Lysine helps build muscle. So it just goes on and on of what these amino acids do. So when we talk eat a low carb diet, this is the biochemistry of it. Like, this is why those proteins are so important, because they help you lose body fat and they help offset cravings and keep your blood sugar stable. So it's the foundation to keep these neurotransmitters in check, especially when you're going through a lot of stress, especially if you're not sleeping, especially if you're, have had a lot of sugar. Protein is critical. And there's a real, again, the biochemistry is fascinating. The other really, fascinating piece is essential fats, and especially omega-3 fats. So omega-3 fats feed the brain, and they're a bit of the raw material for dopamine and serotonin. Raw material meaning it makes it. So if you're deficient in these amino acids and not eating good fatty acids on a regular basis, you don't kind of replenish and make more neurotransmitters. So when we say eat good healthy fats, it helps offset cravings. It helps. So it all kind of starts to come around. It's like, oh, it's not about just, well, I'm, for the sake of being a good person, I'm going to try to eat good food. Like, it really has a profound effect on the body. And so instead of beating yourself up of, you're craving sugar or binging, it's like, what's the deficiency? What's your body really trying to feed? What's your body really trying to eat? And often it's good fats and good proteins. So the other thing, I'm going to say something about artificial sweeteners in the brain. As far as aspartame, we talked about this. I know Dr. Gerber and I disagree a bit on this, but the Journal of Obesity did a study a while ago about how aspartame will block serotonin. So serotonin, I feel good, I'm happy, I'm not craving anything, it blocks it. So when that's blocked, I'm craving, I want to eat more, I'm not sleeping. So that's why I don't like aspartame in general. From insulin and diabetes and that kind of thing, diabetics can have aspartame and then it doesn't shoot up insulin. But from the brain standpoint, I don't like it. So I'd recommend, if you're having trouble with cravings, to take the artificial sweeteners out of there. And then this piece about sleep, who has a hard time sleeping?
I've been having terrible.
So when we go into deep, restful, long sleep, you rebuild neurotransmitters. I mean, sleep is an amazing medicine. When we're in a deep, long sleep, the body regenerates itself. It rebuilds. We're always breaking down, rebuilding. And a big part of what sleep rebuilds is the brain. And so often if you sleep, I know it's true for myself. If I have a night where I sleep like 3 or 4 hours, at 2 in the afternoon, it's like I want sugar. Like I want a sweet chai and I want like some sweet, something. And I didn't sleep. And so I'm trying to get my energy up, but my neurotransmitters get depleted too. So sleep, and again, it's all these foundational pieces, but this is how they biochemically start making a lot of sense. So lean proteins, really good fats, really good sources of carbohydrates that aren't sugary, that aren't kind of depleting dopamine and that kind of thing, are critical, along with really good sleep and really good hydration. And there's a huge method to the madness of what that does to your physiology when you have that foundation in place. So that's kind of the physical side of neurotransmitters. And again, I highly recommend this guy, and this is another one, and I think I've listed them as your resources. Mm-hmm. So this is another MD, and so what Braverman does, he looks at the juice, the actual neurochemicals. What this guy does, Dr. Amon, and he's done some PBS specials, he's in California, and he looks at the actual pieces, the frontal lobe of the brain, the actual sections. He does a SPECT kind of picture of the brain, and to see which parts of the brain are overfiring or underfiring, and he takes a lot of the same approach then of, eating real whole food to calm down kind of an overexcited brain, or a brain that's needs to get more balanced. And so he'll talk about medications and supplements and kind of some mental, emotional stuff and exercise. So having a balanced brain goes a long, long way, and we just kind of don't talk about it, especially in weight loss. So these are 2 doctors, the Edge Effect and then the Amon solution that I'd recommend. A good website? Yeah, really interesting pieces. So on this next page, nutrition recommendations to support optimal brain chemistry. Low carb paleo. This is where it really starts to make sense. Good proteins, good fats, and good sources of vegetables are in place. You want to keep your blood sugar balanced, because if blood sugar is going up and down, then we tend to crave more kind of sweet things, and then that throws off your neurotransmitters. So balance blood sugar, eat on a regular basis, don't skip breakfast, have protein at breakfast. Some supplements that are kind of notorious for balancing blood sugar is lipoic acid, chromium, or cinnamon. So those are some pieces in there. Definitely plan ahead, bring protein snacks with you. I say take the artificial sweeteners out. Different professionals are going to have different opinions, but that's my opinion, is to take those out. And then explore hidden food allergies. So wheat and dairy can often people have a real intolerance to it. And so when people crave bread or they crave cheese and just eat it, I'll ask patients, I'll say, is there something you crave? And they're like, oh, cheese. Like I just, eat blocks of it every week. Or drink gallons of milk, or it's like that bread bowl's in front of me and I finish off the whole bowl. That's something to look at, because it's the same, there's especially with bread, especially with gluten, there's a bit of an opiate response to that, so it kind of sets up that same dynamic as sugar. It's kind of a drug opiate response, and so people will say, oh, portion control, and that's kind of like telling a Coke addict to do portion control with his line of Coke, because you're getting, it's harsh, but it's true, because you're getting an opiate response from gluten. So just be aware, gluten and dairy are huge, not for everybody, but yeah.
What about legumes? beans?
Well, you know, I mean, the paleo people don't like beans from more of an inflammatory position. They think it really inflames the body. I don't know that I'd, you know, single out beans as kind of an addictive piece. I see wheat and dairy as more addictive. And so often, if you have an intolerance, have kind of an addiction, the body's intolerant to it, it's like an addictive process, and you just want to eat more and more, whether it's the bread and then everything else. To take that out of the mix, it helps lose weight, and it helps calm down kind of that excitatory response that gets you in that addictive type of eating. So exploring hidden food allergies, definitely getting adequate sleep. Sunlight's huge, especially if you don't sleep. Huge, 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 because when you get direct sunlight, needs to, you know, the eyes need no sunglasses, no sunblock, direct sunlight for 10 to 15 minutes every day. It helps then the brain make melatonin at night so you can sleep. And light boxes, you know, people often will sit, I have a light box, will sit in front of the light box. I do it in the winter because then I sleep better in the winter. So early morning light, like 10 to 20 minutes. Light is critical for the brain, that pineal gland, and helps that whole cascade of melatonin, serotonin, everything get made. So you want to get direct sunlight. Vitamin D goes along with that. If you're not getting direct sunlight, you don't get enough vitamin D. And having low vitamin D makes people gain more weight. And most people, when we test, they're low vitamin D. So I recommend having that test and then supplementing vitamin D. It can help regulate metabolism. The L-glutamine helps with cravings. 5-HTP and SAMe, do you guys know of those? Have you heard of? So they're in Vitamin Cottage on the market. Basically, they're the natural antidepressants. So it's the Prozac without the prescription. Italy uses SAMe as kind of their standard antidepressant in Italy. I've taken SAMe for years. I love it. Yeah, I'll notice within 3 days if I'm just feeling kind of obsessed about something or really, you know, I'm paranoid, I'm worried. It just calms down my brain chemistry. So you can find it in Vitamin Cottage. And inositol is great for anxiety. And by the way, the 5-HTP SAMe are not like antidepressants where, you know, once you start it, you can't really stop. I mean, I'll start and stop all the time with it. Calcium, magnesium, we really need the good minerals. Lots of sugar will deplete magnesium and B vitamins, so you want to replenish and supplement those, especially folic acid. And then you can supplement GABA. So if you are prone to anxiety and a lot of panic, you can actually, they're called Gaba chews that you can find in Vitamin Cottage, and just chew them, they taste good, and see if that helps the anxiety, and then melatonin for sleep. So those are kind of some things to supplement, with the foundation being a good diet. So you're not eating Pop-Tarts and drinking soda and then trying to do this. Amy?
Yeah, so I have really bad anxiety sometimes. And I have a prescription for it, but I'd rather not take that.
Yeah.
So I could take GABA.
GABA and inositol are kind of the standard natural anti-anxiety.
Really?
Yeah. Passion flower is also great.
Okay.
Passion flower herb is great, or those sleepy time teas,
Okay.
nighttime teas. They have a really nice herbal anti-anxiety formula. So just drink a sleepy time tea. I've done that in the middle of the day. Just drink a sleepy time tea. I mean, I definitely feel, I kind of want to sleep, but it calms me down to do, yeah. So those are some naturals. The one thing I will say is if you're taking an antidepressant, be careful with supplementing amino acids. So don't be on an antidepressant and take a SAMe or a 5-HTP or certain amino acids. I don't have that sheet with me, but just know that. I could talk to you individually. That if you're already on an antidepressant, you kind of have to watch some of this. If you're not on an antidepressant, it shouldn't be a problem. So this is kind of an interesting piece about cocoa and chocolate. Just another craving tip is to actually do some cocoa, some of the non-sugar, just straight cocoa, and mix it in some warm water, and I kind of gave you the recipe here. This comes from a naturopathic doctor in North Carolina. They swear by it, and I have a lot of respect for these guys. They wrote a book called The Metabolic Effect, and on Facebook they have an amazing Facebook page. They put out excellent information all the time. And this is their little prescription about how dark chocolate, and we're not talking white chocolate, milk chocolate, or candy bars. I'm talking dark 70% chocolate, cocoa, will actually help kind of boost up dopamine. And I did write a blog post about this. I just kind of pulled that. So if you want to search my blog, dark chocolate and cravings, So those are kind of my go-to things. Try some glutamine if you have sugar cravings, and try some cocoa. Just stir it in water and see if that helps kind of stop, oh my gosh, I want sugar and I want sugar now. See if that helps. So these are some of the resources, some of the books that I mentioned. The one piece about this overeating notion, this portion control, you know, people tell me all the time, I know I should control my portions better. The End of Overeating, it's a great, kind of a great resource. And so he says, you know, when people are talking, the problem is mixing high sugar, fat, and salt. And that's what gets us into trouble. And when we're talking fat, we're talking like fried, trans fats, okay? So people say, oh, I go to the restaurant and I should, you know, American restaurants, they give us this big portions and I need to limit that. Well, when we honestly think about it, so potato skins, for example, typically the potato is hollowed out and the skin is fried, which provides a substantial surface area for what we call a fat pickup. Then with a combination of bacon bits, sour cream, and cheese is added, the result is fat on fat on fat, which is loaded with salt. And if you think about the cheese, like that, I mean, if you look at, you know, the ingredient paragraph, they're using kind of these, you know, yucky, not good cheeses. It's all chemicals. It's all, same thing like with the, you know, if you went to a restaurant and did like a spinach dip, the spinach is just, it's barely there and it's kind of colored, and all the other junk they put in it, like the sour cream, it's just not real. Like, it's chemicals. And so it's fried fats, it's a lot of sugar, it's a lot of salt, and so we're well fed, but we're not well nourished. And so I say to people, you know, when they say, well, it's, you know, it's about portions, and I think Lauren Cordain said this. Lauren Cordain is the author of the Paleo diet, and I think I heard him say this years ago at a conference, and he says, I challenge you, if you think portion control is a problem, sit down, fill your plate, I mean just heap on a bunch of grilled steamed vegetables and a big 18-ounce steak, and go back and eat 3 more plates of that. You physiologically can't do it. Like half your, I mean, all those vegetables and 3 or 4 16-ounce steaks, like you're like, I mean, you just, the stomach, you can't do it. Same, you know, with fish, or with, if you sit down and eat real food, you're not going to eat 5 or 6 plates. But when we eat fried potato skins and calamari and Captain Crunch, and then people say, oh, I have a portion control, they're not eating food. So I would think about that when you think, you know, portions. Think, what are you really eating? Because when you eat real food, it's physically, you're going to stop. I mean, those vegetables there's so much fiber and it's going to fill you up. What gets us into trouble is eating sugar, salt, and fried fats. Okay, so that's kind of the physical side of it. But then there's definitely going to be the emotion. And do you guys have questions about just the physical before we go into the emotions? Yeah.
Actually, this is just a point of clarification. I've never heard SAMe. Could you just explain what that is?
So SAMe is L-methionine. So it's an amino acid, and you take it in a capsule, and it's basically a natural antidepressant. And it's what it boosts serotonin. So you can buy it in the health food store, and it's what the Italians have used as an antidepressant for years. So Google it. You'll get tons of information on it.
I've seen it at Costco, but I didn't know what it was either, so I didn't buy it.
I love it. I love it. I highly recommend it if you kind of have
Fatty liver, it's good for the liver too.
Exactly, it's great. It's great for the liver. It really heals the liver. So if you have obsessive thoughts, if you obsess about things, if you worry, depression, it's great.
So does that do the same thing as GABA?
GABA is more anti-anxiety, and SAMe is more depression, obsessive thoughts.
And how do you find out about dosages? What's appropriate?
So actually, that's what's nice about doing this. So if you type yourself of where your deficiencies are, you'll come up with kind of a number. Let me see if I can find it. His quiz gives you a number of where you fall in the range of, dopamine, serotonin. Shoot, why can't I find this?
So based on that checklist, it'll give you a number and it'll tell you some of the
Kind of
stuff
what
you should take.
kind of dosage you're looking at.
Right, and so then what he does, and I can't find it, he'll say, for a supplement, if you're kind of mild in there, or moderate, or high, depending on where you rate for your deficiency, then he'll tell you the amount to take. So that's what I like about his resource. So I want to say one thing really quick about obsessive eating in general. So there's this term called orthorexia. Has anyone heard of orthorexia? So anorexics get obsessed about quantity. They want to eat a really small quantity of food, and they just eat, a half of apple a day, or whatever. Orthorexia is obsessed about the quantity. So it becomes this holier than thou, I don't eat any sugar ever. And I get invited to, a friend's house for dinner, and I make this big deal out of it and make the hostess change the whole menu, and I'm a big drama queen. Or vegans, and they get on their soapbox and preach to everybody, and it's this. So it's a real kind of self-righteous, this is how I eat, and no sugar, and oh my gosh, like I had a little gluten, and now I'm going to die kind of thing. So it gets to be an obsession around food, and this is a slippery slope. Because eating real whole food is obviously highly recommended. We need to go more that path. But there's a fine line about when we get obsessed with it. And then looking back at brain chemistry. Because as somebody's so people can be obsessed with exercise. They can be obsessed with religion. They can be, but is it really just a depleted neurotransmitter? And they're acting out in real obsessive forms. And I just kind of throw that out here to, this is fascinating. I love it. Absolutely eat real whole food as much as possible. But as much as you kind of like give yourself a break on, you might be craving brownies, don't shame yourself on that, but also don't set such a high standard. The body's an amazing machine. So, I used to work at the poison center. That was when the panicked mother would call in, the 2-year-old got the aspirin, and so I'd, be on the line with that. And we'd also see, crisis stuff, like the ER doc is saying, I'm going home. Patients in kidney failure, they OD'd on drugs, came in, and they won't be here in the morning. They're not going to make it. I'm going home. And 2 days later, we get the report back, and that patient's up sitting, talking in bed, and they're going to live. I mean, that body just overrode basically a kidney failure. So have some perspective. The body can handle a piece of birthday cake in celebration with friends. If the body can override severe kind of organ failure type stuff. So food is really interesting. It's really fascinating, but watch the obsessive piece is kind of my caution with that, because orthorexia is real. And people get funny. They're like, what do you mean? And then I'm not supposed to, think about absolutely eat real whole food and pay attention to that, but just be mindful of how much that consumes your life with it, okay? So the emotional side, I just thought this was cute, this little nutrition facts about, a lifetime of happiness, self-acceptance, self-love, kind of more the psychology. And I think it's very real, and I think it's really valid. So you're eating low carb, you're eating good fats, you're eating good proteins, you might be doing a little supplementing for anti-anxiety. And doing that, but I think we also just have to recognize the psychology and different life traumas and different things that happen and affect us, and what are we reaching for to self-medicate. Again, it's not shameful, it's not a bad thing, but be really aware of how you process emotions, because if we're not honest about it and aware of it, and again, I don't stand here as a purist, process emotions and eat perfectly, but the more you can be aware of it, the better. And so the stomach is interesting emotionally, so we language it. We say, what's your gut reaction? What does your gut tell you? What's your gut instinct? The belly button's here. This is what the area of the body that sustained us for the first 9 months of our life. So in martial arts, they call it the hara. They call it, it's the solar plex, it's the power center of the body. So there's interesting psychology around this area of the body. So if we say, what does your gut say? What is your gut really telling you right now? What we're saying is the gut's pretty wise. There's a lot of emotional information there. I don't want to deal with it. Like, this happened to me 10 years ago, and it's here, and I don't want to deal with it, and I'm going to stuff it. And I'm going to eat and eat and eat and eat and stuff that emotion. And so that's really valid. And fish oil is not going to take care of that. Absolutely do fish oil, but we have to kind of look at this piece of it. So there's that stuffing mechanism, and just being aware of if you're doing that. I've certainly been there, but I think if you can be aware and just admit it and not beat yourself up, That's kind of the first, and it's like, what am I doing right now? And because when we stuff, it's kind of like, you're out of the body. Like you're not, I don't want to feel this. I don't want to listen to it. So, if you've ever it's like, oh my gosh, I just ate that package of cookies. Like, where was I? Type thing. The other piece of kind of emotional unconscious eating is protecting. So I'm going to buffer. You can't get close to me. I can't get close to you. It becomes a physical buffer. So that's another thing to just be aware of. Again, there's no shame around this. It's just how do you kind of emotionally, and again, your body's just taking care of you on it. And then, and I know for myself, when there's been relationships or situations that I probably shouldn't have been in, I'll put on a couple more pounds. When I get out of those relationships or situations, either on my own or I was pushed out, my weight stabilizes. And it's not that I'm really doing anything any differently, but it's kind of a psychic, there's a protection around that. So think of that. And I'll often, when I talk to clients, sometimes, we'll explore some of that, of what's in that history. And then grounding. So if you're running and just kind of this crazy busy, life and really just never have a time to kind of slow down and breathe, sugar weighs you down. You feel heavy, you feel sluggish. And so it's just kind of this, I'm trying to ground, I'm trying to weigh myself down. So it's that stuffing, protecting, grounding. And what I would say is this idea of, what are you hungry for that has nothing to do with food in your life? What are you craving? And there's some interesting pieces around the emotions of, so, what are you hungry for? Do you just want to do outside, outdoors? Have you been in kind of the concrete, fluorescent, jungle too long? Do you just need to be home? Just kind of in a cozy home environment? Is it more of kind of like, a sensual? Have you not, a massage or just creating, an environment that just kind of feels good to you? A creative outlet, are you hungry for that? Or some self-expression, to just do some things, be silly and have fun and do some play type stuff, some art. So, what you're hungry for, again, I do corporate training all the time and I work with people and I say, I think we have a narrow definition of health in this country. Eat right and exercise. Absolutely, do those things. But I think it's a piece. So I think, we nourish ourselves in all different ways. It's not just the fish oil, okay? So, and then, what's feeding you and not, what are you feeding but kind of not feeding you in return? I mean, those metaphors are kind of strong. So another book that I like, and you can tell I like it because it's falling apart. I mean, I've pretty much highlighted every piece of it, but it's called Eating in the Light of the Moon. And it talks about just these metaphors and archetypes of eating, especially around relationships and money. And I know people don't like to go there, but if things are off with money and relationships, often we want to eat more as kind of a soothing piece. So think about that. One analogy that this book gives that I really like is it talks about if you're standing on the riverbank and the water's rushing along and it pulls you in and you go under and you're trying to survive and breathe and a big log comes down and you grab onto that log and kind of pull yourself up and then you're floating down the river and that log basically saved your life. It's like you caught your breath, you're able to breathe, and that log kind of represents the food. So things are going to happen. Something catastrophic happens, there's grief, you're hurt. Food's the vice. It's not necessarily bad to reach for it because it's that initial way to kind of cope and get through, which is what that log did. But the idea is you don't stay on that log for months and years. You've kind of resurfaced and then you want to get back over to the bank and use other things to support and nourish yourself beyond the food and the sugar. So that's the kind of stuff that book talks about. So just some emotional resources. Does anyone journal? Anybody doing a journal? Cool. I love journal therapy. There's amazing research for mind-body with journaling that when you actually write things down, people are healthier, their blood pressure's better, especially when people are dealing with kind of stuffing emotions or trauma that they're eating. I really recommend journaling, so these are a couple of my favorite resources. body work or energy therapies, I often refer people that I work with in nutrition counseling to go get a Reiki session or healing touch session. Because again, if we're talking about like stuck energy kind of in this area of the body, if you do any body work that can help with that, or any massage, it can be really helpful as we're doing kind of the practical nutrition. Yoga can be really good because it moves the energy through the body, and I gave you 2 sources that I really like. This is a great DVD if you want to try one at home for just kind of grounding and not feeling as stressed. Does anybody know what emotional freedom technique is? Nope. So it's tapping the acupressure points, and I have a nutritionist friend who works very similar with me in nutrition philosophy. She's in Connecticut, and she does nutrition and EFT with her patients and has great success. So you might want to Google EFT and cravings and weight loss, and it's a great thing to do as far as mind-body. So eat low carb, eat the good kind of, healthy fats and proteins, and then do some of the EFT work around it to overcome cravings. Bach flower remedies I like a lot too, and I wrote a blog post, so just go on Healthy Discoveries and search Bach flowers. And so like Amy, you were saying, for anxiety or different things, so there's different components where you can use Bach flowers, and I find them really effective for worrying about things or that kind of thing. And then a resource for meditation. And so again, if we're talking brain and brain chemistry, it's not just, what you eat and what you supplement that can help shift the brain chemistry. So any type of deep breathing or meditation can help with that. And cognitive behavior therapy is a piece that can unlock, if you get really stuck in like all or nothing thinking or black or white, I have to eat this way, or I totally blew it, so now I'm just going to eat all this junk. If you get caught up in that type of stuff, cognitive behavior therapy gives really concrete kind of antidotes how to unlock yourself out of that. And I actually do have a resource if you want to look at that afterwards of some of those examples of what it'll do. There's an institute in Boulder, it's called the Institute for the Psychology of Eating, that focuses all on more the emotion side of things. That's an interesting resource. And then I love this book. So The Gift of Our Compulsions. And she used to be a compulsive overeater. And she just kind of talks through the psychology about the compulsion, and then that eating in the light of the moon is what I recommended. So those are some of kind of the mind-body psychology that I think are really interesting to look at. And then, I would just kind of remind you guys, as I said at the end, of that nourishment isn't just about, the foundation of this is low carb. And low carb goes a long way for balancing your neurotransmitters and balancing your blood sugar. But then it really is kind of the big picture of how are you nourishing yourself with relationships and with relaxation and with your sleep, because all of that helps balance neurotransmitters too. And and ultimately can offset some of those cravings. Whereas if you just kind of feel like you have to white knuckle it and feel bad about yourself, then that just makes it worse and just kind of perpetuates the cycle. So what questions do you have? Yeah?
I don't have a question, but I learned a lot.
Anything going back to the physical side of neurotransmitters?
Is this a website or actually like a physical place in Boulder, this institute?
It's both.
Okay, so we can check it out on the web.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It's both.
So somebody is used to eating sugar and just kind of junk, and then they switch to kind of low carb diet or slow carb diet or paleo, whatever. Is there any supplements that you would recommend to go to right away? Is there anything that their body may react, right? Your body's going to adjust. And
Right.
From what I've heard, it's kind of a shock to the system, right? Suddenly getting up and exercising, right? You've been sedentary forever, it's going to actually hurt a little bit. So from an emotional standpoint, what are the repercussions going to be from switching from kind of an unhealthy eating to a healthy eating? Is that going to change you psychologically, temporarily? Is there things you can do to mitigate?
So are you asking more what could you do psychologically or physically?
Well, maybe perhaps
For both?
Right.
Okay, so absolutely, when if you're eating a lot of sugar and tomorrow you start eating strict low carb, by day 3 you'll probably be hurting a little bit, or sooner. You'll feel it. I mean, you're going through a detox, you're going through a withdrawal. First, one of the best things you can do is eat regularly. So eat every 2 or 3 hours. Those first couple days is going to be huge to help because blood sugar is all over the place. So eat on a really regular basis. And every time you eat some protein, eat some good fat, eat some good vegetables. Do that. To offset sugar cravings, I recommend stuff like actually supplementing amino acids. So you could take amino acids like in a whey protein, taking extra glutamine, taking chromium to offset like the blood sugar. So those would be things, I do drink lots and lots of water, sleep, really get, kind of extra sleep. I would focus more on sleep those first couple days than trying to exercise. And then, emotionally, Bach flowers are great. Like the Bach flower walnut is specifically for transition. So any kind of transition that you're going through, so if you've been eating one way and you're radically eating another way 2 days later, take some Bach flower or take some walnuts. So things, things like that. Taking like Epsom salt baths, because that helps kind of pull some of the toxins out with those Epsom salts. Adding more minerals, because again, when you eat a lot of sugar, you get really depleted in minerals. Take a multivitamin. So it's going back to all of the foundational pieces and really replenishing and being really kind of super focused about that until the body kind of calms down and gets through the transition. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Have you tried to go from one to the other? Are you in that now?
A while back, yeah. And, I have friends that kind of see my results and are interested, and the first few days can be kind of rough. And I just, I wonder too if there aren't some longer reaching, components to that as well, emotional.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I think that if anybody has a significant change, right, physically, emotionally, otherwise, I mean, it's totally linked together.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I've been interested in is, well, serotonin's, I guess there's a certain carbohydrate serotonin link, right?
Right.
So if you suddenly stop the carbohydrates, what are you going to do to increase the serotonin? And I know that there's a lot of, isn't there a link too between some of the things you're going to get in protein that may actually inhibit uptake? I mean, they're all kind of related, and I guess we don't really know that much about them, but I think I was reading something about tryptophan. It was the 5-HTP.
Right.
Do you have to take that like kind of isolated, like you do some other things, where there may be some other things in protein that inhibit its absorption, or is there anything like that specific?
So you mean like if you ate a piece of meat, would that inhibit the absorption of 5-HTP?
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, real food is not going to negatively affect biochemistry. What's going to negatively affect biochemistry is chemicals and things that aren't real food. So, there's certain supplements that they'll say take away from food because the absorption's better. But I wouldn't say, you can't eat a hamburger because you're taking 5-HTP at night. Is that what you're saying? So yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you've been self-medicating with sugars to keep your serotonin boosted, and you take sugars out of the diet, now what are you going to do to boost that serotonin? And so that's why, things like looking at supplements, looking at SAMe, 5-HTP, I think eating on a regular basis is critical critical for blood sugar and to kind of offset some of that. But it takes a good 72 hours to kind of get over that initial hump, and some of that is just, I'm going to do this, and I'm committed to it, and I'm just going to get through, and it kind of sucks right now, but I'll feel better in 2 days. And so to kind of...
Is it really a 2-day turnaround? Because I almost wonder if it's not longer than that.
I think you're being awfully kind.
For 3 days?
Well, no, yeah, and it may have to do with how much of a sugar issue you had, but literally I felt that the first 2 weeks I would watch a truck roll by and go, I'm diving in front of it.
Yeah.
It literally, I felt sick, I felt, like no energy, I felt nauseous, and it literally took me 2 weeks. And that was doing everything you're saying, drinking the fluids, eating frequently, but to get that sugar, it really took me a full 2 weeks. And
I think her reaction was possibly partial withdrawal from.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
Missing the sugar but I mean, it sounds almost like withdrawal.
Yeah, I mean, sugar has a very drug, I mean, they equate it to cocaine and heroin.
Yeah.
So you're going through withdrawal.
I literally put it like I went through the DTs. That's what it was like for me.
Some of the low-carb experts also talk about chicken bouillon, which has a high concentration of salt, that there's a loss of minerals during that initial phase, and so that may help with some of the symptoms as well.
Yep. So electrolytes, minerals, I mean, the sodium from the bouillon cube is going to be, and that's what I was thinking when you were saying that. Try supplementing.
Like, especially to sleep, because I had that cold kind of active leg thing going on and wanting to cramp and stuff.
Yeah.
So I would do bouillon at night, and that would help me get through the night. Yeah. With the sodium and stuff like that.
It's not easy.
No, you're being way nice. You're just being so nice. It's like, to me, it's like, I had read enough about it that I knew what was coming.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I just put my head down and had to get through it.
Yeah. So a couple other resources is this woman, the Mood Cure and Diet Cure, Julia Ross.
That in the mail.
Yeah. So she's interesting. So the story behind her, and so well, actually, what is her diet cure?
She's a Bay Area gal, too.
She is.
From
So,
County.
and she has specific kind of protocols and supplements on, like the ex-dieter, the overcoming like food allergy addictions. So if you're addicted to gluten, balancing blood sugars, and she'll give supplements, and and again, with all of this, I mean, the foundation of it is that low-carb kind of eating is the foundation, but then she'll do the supplements. So the story behind her goes back even before her. So there's a recovery center in Minneapolis called the Health Recovery Center, and so that woman has a PhD in nutrition, and her son was an alcoholic. And he was young, he was like 18, and this was 20 years ago. He was an alcoholic, he went through traditional recovery, and he white-knuckled it, and he got dry, and then he killed himself 6 months later. He didn't drink, but neurotransmitters were never replenished, and so she said, what is this? He didn't drink alcohol. Why did he crash into that depression? And so she started looking at it, researching it, got her PhD in nutrition, opened up this recovery center. Her book is called 7 Weeks to Sobriety, and so this thing that I was reading that like the neurotransmitters, what they do with brain and sugar, that comes from her book. That's where I got that. So she has a really interesting model where people go to her recovery center who are drug addicts and alcoholics, and they don't do any kind of AA psychology. They go clean their biochemistry. They put them on minerals, they put them on fatty acids, they do all that. And then this woman, Julia Ross, kind of modeled that and did it from the diet perspective, from the sugar perspective, and she has clinics in California taking people who want to get off sugar, who want to stabilize their weight, using all the same kind of models and protocols, so that's what those books are.
So can I tell you something that it took me a while to figure out, because I've done a little bit of research on this, and it might have been that gal you were talking about, but I remember reading somewhere that as an alcoholic, that it so destroys your brain chemistry that it could take a year to a year and a half, because I think I could have got through it easier with the supplementation. Because I think it's the same thing. I took the sugar away, and that's what was creating my brain chemistry up there, and then it all went away, and it was like, flat on the floor.
So again, so as much as I love paleo and low carb, and I'm right on board with that nutritionally, it's one piece. It's the foundation. You have to have that foundation in, but you guys are right that when you take out that sugar, now what are you going to replace it with? Because it's what we've been self-medicating with. And Dr. Amen will argue from alcohol that alcohol will really, I mean, you destroy brain cells that you can never bring back. Yeah, where sugar, we can rebalance those mineral deficiencies and those fatty acid deficiencies. You know, and another thing I would say is high amounts of omega-3 fats are just critical in all of this because it helps stabilize blood sugar, it helps metabolism, helps you lose weight, and it helps feed those neurotransmitters. We're depleted, you know, that brain chemistry is off, and fish oil is going to help put that brain chemistry back.
So is cod liver oil the same as the fish oil? That's still you're going to get your omega-3? Okay.
So what else? Did that answer questions for those of you who are trying to kind of come off sugar and struggling with it from a physical perspective?
I'll just say my husband and I have been doing this for about 7-8 weeks now, and I have to remind myself or ourselves that it's okay to add in the fats. Just a plate of veggies, red peppers and broccoli and cauliflower and whatever, that you have to keep the fat in there too.
Fat feeds the brain.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in fat. We need good fats. Yeah.
This might sound funny. We've been doing this since November, and we didn't really have a problem coming off of the carbs or the sugars or anything like that. It was pretty easy. But now our problem is incorporating fats into the diet and realizing what is a good fat and what is not good. So we're still struggling with that, even though, we've been doing this. I don't know.
Because you got so scared of fat?
No, I don't know. We just forget what is a good fat.
Okay,
Good fat.
good question. So cooking real butter. Just use real butter, none of those spreads, no margarines. Coconut oil, I love. Olive oil, I love. Avocado is great. Walnut oil, if you've ever, so when you do like an oil and vinegar salad dressing, walnut oil is tasty. I mean, it's that toasty walnut taste, and it's omega-3. Mix it with a good balsamic vinegar. Depending on kind of where you are and leaning down, if nuts can be a good fat, but we'll say if you're in that shredding stage, I would recommend not doing nuts. And then I love fish oil. I mean, I just think fish oil is...
Well, and we're doing all that, but what are you eating? Like, we have this big thing of coconut oil, and Dr. Gerber said he takes a spoon of it, and I tried to do it the other day, and I just lost it.
Have you mixed it with some warm water?
Or coffee.
No,
I actually like it in a cup of
you
coffee.
can put it in anything, and it really doesn't have any flavor. I mixed it with some warm water and drank it, and you can't taste it.
or smoothies. I put it in smoothies before. I use it to saute vegetables. I use it to cook eggs.
Do you do nuts and stuff?
One of my favorite morning drinks is Dunkin' Donuts coffee.
Good, right?
I've heard that.
With coconut.
Well, and I've heard we talked about this last time, but butter in coffee. I haven't tried it yet, but people put butter in coffee. Yeah.
Jolene, explain the cheese issue, what the concerns are with cheese.
Is that just from an allergy?
Yeah, wheat and dairy.
How would you know if you had an allergy to dairy?
You pretty much stop it. So,
like, how would you know though? Like, what would?
Can't lose weight, bloated, skin, acne. A lot of it, a lot of patients I'll see, it's like they're just like, I just can't move, kind of this bloat. I can't get rid of this 10 pounds, and I take them off dairy, and there it goes.
So what if you were eating it, and then you get to a plateau, and then all of a sudden you can't? So should you stop the dairy because you have developed a sensitivity to it? If you've eaten it too much, do you think? Or
that can happen.
It can?
That can happen.
Do you think you could plateau like that? Because I've incorporated cheese the whole time, and I was like at the first year like 300. I'm probably around 225 right now.
Good.
But I'm probably I'm staying away from the scale, but just by the way the clothes fit, I think I'm just hanging this last 3 weeks, 4 weeks right around. You know?
I mean, that's the difference between low carb and paleo, is low carb does cheese. Paleo doesn't,
That try
or
cutting out
dairy.
dairy?
So I would say if you're curious, thinking, I wonder if I have an intolerance, I wonder if if it'd help lose weight, it has to all go out.
Right.
So all cheese, all milk, all yogurt, sour cream, ice cream, cottage cheese.
Butter, still okay?
I'm okay with butter. I know there's.
I could almost give up anything but butter.
Yeah, I'm okay with butter because I consider butter, more. I know.
The fats, right.
Yeah, I'm okay with butter. But what I'm talking is, the gallons of milk and the big blocks of cheese. And then what I've seen with patients is if they're intolerant and they take it out and they're strict for 2 or 3 weeks, they notice a big difference. If they're not intolerant and they take it out, they come back and they're like, no difference. I'm like, okay, well that wasn't the piece. But if you're intolerant, the body will tell you.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you've hit a weight loss plateau, then it might be something to consider by cutting back on your dairy.
Yeah, that's the only dairy we're eating is cheese, so.
Yeah, cheese is hard for me. I don't.
Yeah, because for me, it's almond milk.
And is it just like, a little bit like, on fajitas, or is it you're eating a whole block of cheese in a week? I mean, it's two different things.
Yeah, no,
Like
it's
Gaba.
probably, it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, it's not like, oh, here, this is a good meal, slice some cheese up. But it's,
Throwing block out.
yeah.
I mean, where I see it is literally patients who they eat blocks of cheese every single week, or they drink a gallon or so of milk every week. That's kind of what and I'll say to people, what do you crave? And they're like, oh, milk or cheese. I can't live without it. And I'm like,
Milk's a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
So that's not even an option.
Yeah, for me, it's almond milk, that unsweetened almond milk.
Yeah.
But I probably do an ounce or 2 ounces of cheese, and like every other day or so.
Yeah, but it's not a lot of cheese, isn't it?
yeah, so that's.
Yeah.
See, again, I mean, I think if it's just a couple, a little bit on tacos, like your shellless taco, I don't think that's an issue.
I
But
definitely eat it daily.
Yeah, me too.
Definitely daily. What do you think about that?
I think stop doing it for 14 days and see what happens.
Yeah, I think it'd be worth a try.
I mean, that's just from my nutritional training for years and years. I've just heard take your patients off wheat and dairy. Take your patients off wheat and dairy. Those are the two, and it's the American diet. So, but they're interesting things to play with if you're plateaued, and it sets up kind of that addictive craving piece too.
Well, I know, I usually eat cheese every other day or so, and I'm ready for it when I come that next day.
So I think that's a bit of a signal because we don't crave broccoli.
I do.
Do you?
It's the one stupid vegetable. I'm like on the search for it. Salad bars. Seriously, it's the weird.
Okay, so we don't crave lima beans. How's that?
But broccoli, what's in broccoli that I would possibly be craving?
Yeah. So there's something to, if you crave something, there's just, there's no end-all be-all answer, but it's something to go, is it an addictive kind of, intolerance that's just, tripping up brain chemistry and making me hold on to weight? Or are you deficient in something? Like, are you deficient in magnesium? And so you're minerals, so you're craving foods trying to fill up on minerals? Or is it emotions? Like, they'll attach emotions with things. They'll say, people who crave like really kind of crunchy, salty things, they'll say it's like they need to deal with anger. Or people who want sweet things emotionally, they need more sweetness in their life. They just need to create more. So we can go different ways with it. I mean, it's not, and none of it's bad. It's not like, oh my gosh, you crave that, you're this weak person. It's just like, how interesting. That physical or that emotional needs to have a little bit more nourishment.
I was wondering if that was true. They said that when you do crave like certain foods, if there was something in it that your body was lacking. Like when I crave like a steak, because I don't eat a lot of steaks, but sometimes I crave it. I'm like, what's in it?
Iron, zinc,
So that is
B12.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, amazing amounts of B12 and iron and zinc in steak, and we're often kind of deficient in those things.
So it's kind of like the study they did on babies years ago. They put all these foods in front of babies, and they let them choose the foods because they figured out what they were deficient in and what they needed, because babies won't starve.
Right.
And we have this mindset we have to stuff certain foods in their little mouths. And it was fascinating to read that study that just like that, they knew when they wanted to eat a protein source or a fiber source or meat, and it was just fascinating if we just left kids to their own.
As long as you don't put like Twinkies in front of them, because then their palate gets completely tainted.
No, I mean, it
yeah.
wasn't junk food. I mean, it was nutritious food.
Okay.
Back then, what they called the 4 food groups, But
babies love oil. I've seen babies, if you prick open just a little thing of fish oil, a good quality fish, they love it.
I'm going to try that.
Instinctively, kids love, so in the 50s we gave kids teaspoons of fish oil. It was very common. Cod liver oil. It was very common.
they used to do that as kids.
It was one of the best things mothers did for their kids. Today, kids bounce off the walls with ADD. I'm making a leap. It's not the direct cause, but the brain is 70% fat. Anxiety, depression, hyperactivity, we don't have that good fat in the brain. They fortify baby formula with DHA, which is what's in fish oil, because women don't get it. They're not getting it through the breast milk, so they fortify formula. And babies instinctively like
Same thing with monolaurin, which is coconut. That's what's fortified in infant formulas as well.
We get ourselves into a lot of trouble by not eating good fats when we talk brain chemistry and cravings, and putting good fats back in your diet can really, really help.
I just want to mention a couple things about food, and that is fish oil. I take cold water salmon oil. I'm a big Dr. Perricone kind of supporter. Bread, I found, I don't know if any of you have heard of Julian's Bakery, but it's good bread, and it is high quality bread. 12 grams of fiber in one slice, and it has 1 carb in it.
Is it gluten, or is
It raises your blood sugar.
Yeah.
We were just did a study on it.
Yeah, Dana
But I mean,
Carpenter. I only have 1 slice of it a day, but it just gets me over that, It only has 1 net carb.
So gluten raises blood sugar. Like wheat bread raises insulin.
Shelley, I bought 2 loaves. I even bought the cinnamon raisin one, and I was having a slice a day with a little bit of peanut butter on it. I had it with my eggs. It's bread. And he said, if it looks like bread, I said, it's bread. And he did a study, Jimmy Moore did, and he said it raises blood sugar just like a slice of bread does.
Wow.
So it's really,
Even though the net carbs, you take that?
even though the fiber, no matter what, it still has the wheat in it. It still has the wheat gluten. It still
Somebody
has, and I
paid-
looked at the ingredients.
Yeah, somebody paid to do a private study and found out that.
So my favorite bread, if you're eating grains but don't want gluten, is teff, T-E-F-F, which is a whole grain. So when we say eat whole grains, everyone thinks it's whole wheat, but true whole grains. And it's made by outside the bread box in Colorado Springs. It's in Vitamin Cottage, and it's yummy, T-E-F-F. So there's no gluten in it, but it is grains. So depending
It
on...
has more carbs than the Julian Bakery. It still has less impact on blood sugar.
Whole wheat
But that's the
is...
whole premise of fiber. Fiber is supposed to offset the sugar impact in your body. Is that a bunch of hooey?
I'm not a gluten girl.
My whole paradigm here. Net carbs has to do with the subtraction of fiber from food.
I'm not a big believer in net carbs, and I'll tell you why. I actually went out and bought myself a meter, and I test myself after meals. And I think it's individual how certain people react to certain things. But the whole net carb thing for me doesn't work very well. It's still going to spike my blood sugar.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
It's it's grains, it's flour.
I know, it's really...
Even though
It might work for you, so if you feel like poking yourself. Sometimes it's not so fun to go, but I do.
Yep.
I experiment with things and then test myself before I eat it an hour and then 2 hours.
how do you test yourself?
With a blood sugar meter.
What's the blood sugar meter?
So guys, we'll end. If you have other stuff for me, I'm happy to answer, but we'll cut it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was very enlightening.